Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. This time we are doing a special video. So if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, you already know what's about to happen. So today's video is for a friend of mine that is, growing in the EDH and showing some real promise. They asked me if I could help them with a deck. They want to do Runo Stormkirk Eldrazi. So even though I'm making this video for a friend of mine, feel free to post combos and ideas and strategies for them in the comments below, because even though this is from me to a friend, that doesn't mean this can't inspire you to build the same deck, right? So getting into it, Runo Stormkirk is a interesting vampire cleric in the blue-black colors. We'll get into his stats and everything in a bit, but for now, the most decks that you'll see are sea creatures. Runo Stormkirk focuses on, well, I shouldn't say Runo, but Crothis, I think that's how you spell his name, pronounce his name, focuses on making 2 copies of sea creatures being krakens, leviathans, octopus, and serpents. You don't have to make copies of those creatures, but when you do, you make 2 copies instead of 1. But like I said, you're not limited to it. So if you choose a creature that's not a sea creature, like a kraken, leviathan, octopus, or serpent, you make 1 token of that creature tapped and attacking. So there's a reason why we bring that up, because with Eldrazi, Eldrazi's are really big creatures, and they also tend to be above 6 higher, 6 or higher CMC. Sorry, got tongue tied. Which is what Runo cares about to flip. He wants a creature at the beginning of your upkeep to be 6 or greater at the top of your deck, so he can flip over. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because they share a lot of similarities, not just because they're big CMC creatures, but also because they do happen to share one type of crossover, and that crossover being a creature. So let's find that creature real quick, because that creature is going to be very significant. Actually, I know I passed it because I've seen it here before. Where the heck are you? Oh my god, I had it. Oh, there we go. Elder Deep Fiend. Sorry. Elder Deep Fiend is an Eldrazi octopus. The reason why I'm bringing up this creature specifically is because this creature covers both worlds, okay? So it's an 8-drop Eldrazi octopus with power and toughness 5 and 6. It has flash. It has the effect emerge, but we don't really care about that. What we care about is the bottom ability. When you cast this spell, tap up to 4 target permanents. So being in the colors of blue and black, blue, you have a way to bounce this back to your hand and cast it again. And then if you choose to, you can make 2 copies with Crothis, but that's not the point. Eldrazi octopus that taps permanents. Some people may say that's not a good effect. It sucks. But we're in blue and black, and when you have infinite colorless mana, that doesn't really matter. You can just keep bouncing him back to your hand and casting him all over again as many times as you want. Anyway, let's get into the stats and breakdown of Runo and just start talking about like why Eldrazi's work well with this commander. Alright, so getting into Runo Stormkirk himself, the leader of the Stormkirk House of Vampires that is also obsessed with greater beings, and also being that of Innistrad's sea god that is at the bottom of their ocean. So Runo Stormkirk, the first side, is a 3-drop, 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black commander. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. Legendary creature, vampire cleric that has a power and toughness of 1/4. Runo Stormkirk has flying, And when Runo Stormkirk, I'm gonna get tongue tied this whole video, enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature from your graveyard on top of your library. That is a very good effect for these colors, and I will get to that in a second. So at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Runo Stormkirk. Okay, let's take a second to just talk about the front side before we talk about the flip side. The reason why this works for Eldrazi's is because in black, you have ways to send cards from your deck to the graveyard. Cards like Entomb, Buried Alive, Final Parting, cards that just say specifically, choose a card from your library, send it to the graveyard. He's already putting them back into your hand at the beginning. So it's like, you want that to happen. Well, I mean, not at the beginning, but when he enters the battlefield, you want that to happen. So that's giving you a good way to do things. Entomb is a 1-drop spell card where you just pay 1 black, choose a card. You could choose any Eldrazi. Let's use the one that we had before, the Eldrazi Octopus as an example. You send that from your deck to the graveyard. You cast him on your second or third turn. Most likely your second turn, given that this is blue and black and you have access to artifacts, which we'll get into in a second. You cast him, he looks at that Eldrazi Octopus card that you have in the graveyard and puts it back on top of your deck. So that way you can automatically transform Runo. That's just what you want. That's speed right there, because you're getting a 3/5 creature that's going to make a token. So getting a 3/5 creature out that fast that is legendary is going to help you out, and we're going to get into more about this in a few, but you can already see where I'm going with this and why I'm excited about this, because it is a good build. So going to the backside, Krothus, Lord of the Deep. Krothus is a flip card, so he does not have a mana cost, but he has flying. He's a Kraken horror, and he has, whenever Krothus, Lord of the Deep, attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that is a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. So, getting into it, he's a 3/5. You're flipping him. He's going to make a token of anything. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's attacking with him. So you just need big stuff to attack with him. What better big stuff to have attacking than Eldrazi's, especially Eldrazi's with Annihilator? I mean, like, come on, like that's what you want, right? So you're making people sacrifice stuff. You're getting another token. Yes, the token is not going to have the Annihilator triggers. It can have ETB triggers because you're creating another token, which is the tokens entering the battlefield, tapped and attacking. But the token doesn't go away at the end of the turn. You keep that token. It's not being sacrificed or exiled at the end of combat or at the end of the turn. It stays on the field. So as an example, let's say you attack with Desolation Twin. Well, you then get a copy of Desolation Twin. If you casted Desolation Twin from your hand, you now have 2 extra Desolation Twins. You see what I mean? That's 30 power attacking. That's what you want. So like stuff like that is what's going to make this deck powerful. It's going to have explosive turns with the potential that you have from making these tapped and attacking tokens. They may not be sea creatures like Krakens, Leviathans, etc., etc. You're not getting 2 of them, but for Eldrazi's, when you have creatures that are coming in that are like 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, that you're making copies of that are tapped and attacking, you're gonna see heads turn. You're gonna see people start to freak out, and you're gonna become arch enemy. So because of this, I want to get into why this color combination is going to be good. I've already touched on it a little bit, but I want to elaborate a little bit more and kind of split up the colors, because we are in blue and black, aka Dimir, but for the most part we're in blue and black, and there are a lot of things that you can pull from them separately to help speed up this deck and also make it more consistent. All right, so we're going to start off with blue, and keep in mind, even though I'm making this video for a friend, if you are watching this video and you have ideas for combos or maybe even tech cards that you would add in to help out a friend, to help out a fellow planeswalker, add them to the comments below. Trust me, it will be very appreciated. So with blue, we're starting off with this color because blue has a very good way to mana ramp, and when you're playing Eldrazi's, you always want to mana ramp no matter what color you're in, because you may have to play them from your hand, or you may have to cast them from your graveyard or from the top of your deck, whichever. And blue has a very powerful way to search for artifacts, especially artifacts that can be turned into mana. So when you have the cycle of mages, which I think there's 4 of them officially now, there is the trinket, tribute, trophy, and treasure mage. Haha, I remembered them. Each one of them searches for a different artifact, but for the sake of this section, we're going to focus on trophy mage. Trophy mage is a 3-drop, 2 colorless, 1 blue creature, human wizard, power and toughness of 2. That has the effect of, when trophy mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact with converted mana cost 3, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. The reason why we're focusing on trophy mage is because trophy mage helps us get into our infinite mana. I'm starting off with infinite mana right off the bat because we're talking about Eldrazi. So with trophy mage, you can search for a card called Basalt Monolith. Basalt Monolith is a very powerful mana rock. Basalt Monolith is a 3-drop mana rock, 3 colorless, and it has the ability of, you can tap it to add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. It doesn't untap as normal during your untap step. They've cleaned this up. I'm reading the old version of the card to you, but the newer one should be on screen. And pretty much it has, you can spend 3 mana to untap the card. So what you can do with that is, there's another card in this 3-card combo that I'm going off with, and that last card, because we're in blue and black, is Forsaken Monument. Forsaken Monument is an Eldrazi focused, not specifically, but just an Eldrazi focused artifact. Forsaken Monument costs 5 colorless to play. It is a legendary artifact from the recent Zendikar set, which I can't remember the name of fully, and it says colorless creatures you control get +2/+2, so it's already making our Eldrazi stronger. And it says, whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, add an additional colorless to that. All right, so then it also has, whenever you cast a colorless creature, gain 2 life. The reason why this works the way it does is because Basalt Monolith taps for 3 colorless mana. Forsaken Monument will make it tap for 4 colorless mana. You put the 3 back into Basalt Monolith, untap it, you have 1 mana left over, you tap it again, add the 3, untap it with 3, now you have 2 left over, and you can just keep doing this until either someone stops you or until you feel like 9,000 is enough colorless mana to summon every Eldrazi in your hand. But the thing is about this artifact is Forsaken Monument also helps with cards like Soul Ring. It also helps with mana rocks like Sisay's Ring, with Hedron Archive, with other mana rocks that tap for colorless. It makes Mind Stone tap for 2 instead of 1. This is something that you want to have in this deck, also because it's a very good anthem for your Eldrazi's, making them hit harder, giving you extra mana, and also making you gain life at the same time. So that's why I wanted to get into blue for the mana ramp, because that's something that you can look into very quickly. I've already mentioned that you can search for it with Trophy Mage, but with the other mages, you can search for other things. They don't all have to be mana rocks, but I would like to use them for mana rocks because it gives you that option. Plus, if you feel inclined enough, you can attack with one of the mages with Runo Stormkirk if it's early in the game. Let's say, you know, you flip Runo into Crothis at like turn 2, turn 3, you get out a Trophy Mage. Next turn, you still don't have enough mana to play the Eldrazi that's in your hand, but guess what? You can attack with the Trophy Mage and the Crothis. You make a copy of the Trophy Mage, and guess what? You get to search for another 3-drop mana rock from your deck because you created a token of Trophy Mage that comes in tapped and attacking. Because it's entering the battlefield, it gets its effect again because it's an ETB. So stuff like that in blue can really help speed up this deck, getting you mana ramp, getting you support that you need to get into bigger plays faster. Even though you don't have haste, you don't really need the haste. I mean, there are a couple ways to get haste in blue and black through artifacts, but like I said, this is a good way to mana ramp fast. So getting into the black side, black has a lot of ways to support this deck. While it doesn't have great mana ramping options early on in the game, it does have really good search potential to get Runo to flip over very fast. You may not want to flip him over right away, but you want to at least have the option to flip him over when you feel like it. Okay, so there's a difference between those two statements, and we'll get into them. So the first way is, let's say you open up with a card like Entomb. Entomb specifically says search your library for a card sorry, drew a blank, and put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Okay, 1-drop black, easy, search for a card, put it into your graveyard. Okay, well, let's say you don't want to flip over Runo this early. Let's say you want to wait maybe another turn or two. If this is your option, you can either do one of two things. You can either go for the flip and send a card like Void Widower to the graveyard, which then after you play Runo will be put on top of your library, and then you'll flip over this giant 9-drop Eldrazi. For those of you that don't know, or you see him on screen, I will read Void Widower out because Void Widower is one of those cards that makes people cry. Void Widower is a 9-drop Eldrazi with a power and toughness of 11/9. Its effect is your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana cost. 0 is even. Your opponents cannot block with creatures with even converted mana cost. In other words, you can't even, bro. So that's a card you could go for if you want to flip over Runo and you have, like, let's say a really good hand. If you don't have a really good hand, but you happen to have a card like Buried Alive in your hand, you can then choose to do other things. So let's say you get a card like Kozilek's Channeler. Kozilek's Channeler, if you send that to the graveyard, let's say along with Void Widower and Emrakul the Promised End, Kozilek's Channeler is a mana dork Eldrazi. It costs 5, not 6 or higher, so Runo won't flip over, but you'll get a mana dork that can tap for 2 colorless. And like I said before, with Forsaken Monument, having that on the field with both of them at the same time, you will be able to tap Kozilek's Channeler for 3 mana instead of 2. That's something that can help you ramp into something like Void Widower, where, you know, you need the extra mana ramp. You know, you have your wizards to get you your rocks. You can then use your black to send things to the graveyard to help you move forward. There are also other cards that make Eldrazi Scions and Eldrazi Spawn, which you can then use to sacrifice like treasure tokens to get mana, but that's just something that I wanted to point out, where you can have options. If you get Final Parting or Buried Alive in your opening hand, or within your first couple draws, that'll give you multiple cards to the graveyard, where Entomb will just get you one card. You know, if you get Entomb and you're ready to flip Runo, send a card like Emrakul or Void Widower straight to the graveyard, get it back on top of your deck, flip over Runo, and start having fun. But like I said, those are just a couple cards that could help out, but that's what black can do early on in the game, which is set up your graveyard and get you ways to flip Runo over as fast as possible. Also, things that can help you fill up your graveyard are draw cards. I wouldn't use cards, well, actually I was gonna say I wouldn't use cards like Brainstorm or Ponder, but you actually can, because that's top deck selection. So you can draw, let's say you have Void Widower in your hand already. Brainstorm is a 1-drop spell where you draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your library. With Runo out on the field, you could put Void Widower on top. That way, at the beginning of your next upkeep, you flip over, and bam, there's Void Widower. You already knew it was there. Runo flips over. And then there are also other cards in blue that draw, which, like Frantic Search, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, untap 2 lands. Cards like that, where you draw cards and then discard cards afterward, putting them into your graveyard. You could put the higher cards like Emrakul, Promise End, that won't shuffle things back into your graveyard, but is above the 6 CMC requirement to flip over Runo. And then other cards in black that can help you with getting cards back to your hand from the graveyard are cards like Phyrexian Reclamation, which is an enchantment, where you pay mana to get a card back from your graveyard to your hand. There are also other spells in black. Black has a lot of this, where it'll say choose a creature or choose multiple creatures of the same types or different types in your graveyard and add them back to your hand. There are a lot of spells, instants and sorceries in black that have these effects, so that way you never feel like you can't get these cards back. That's one of the things that's going to give you an advantage, sending these cards to the graveyard and then getting them back to your hand to then hard cast them to get their effects, or even just reanimate them from the graveyard with cards. Well, there are plenty of cards, we'll get into that later, but you know what I mean. Filling up your graveyard, having the selection, getting them out, making tokens. You want that cycle to be a thing, so that way you always have something to kind of keep the field full, or even keep your hand full. If somebody board wipes, you can play one of these instants or sorceries that can get you 1 or 2 creatures back from your graveyard to your hand, so that way you can refill your hand. That way you're not losing your field presence or your hand advantage. And for the last segment, I'm going to kind of just go off topic a little bit and just talk about some things. Don't be afraid to find your own deck identity as you're building this. There are a bunch of different ways you can do this. Of course, the baseline that you want to focus on is having enough mana to play everything, and then being able to refill your hand and flip over Runo, as efficient and as fast as possible. Because once you throw out big Eldrazi's like Void Widower and start making copies of them, people are going to freak out. That's just going to happen. You're going to have a target on your back very fast. So don't be afraid to play other support cards that you feel fit your strategy. And this should be for everyone. That's why I'm kind of just not going with the script here. If you want to play cards like Omniscience, yes, I said Omniscience. That's the way I'm pronouncing it, because when I say Omniscience in my Google phone, that's the card that pops up and it brings it up as one word. Omniscience, of course, is a great card. It's really high in mana cost, but it allows you to cast cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. Don't be afraid to use cards like Archetype of Imagination, giving your creatures flying, removing flying from your opponents, giving you an advantage, giving you evasion. Don't be afraid to use cards like Sakashima or Helm of the Host. Even though Runo or Crothis is making copies, he can only really make copies of non-legendary creatures. So with Sakashima being in blue, you can make a copy of an Emrakul or a Kozilek on the field and have multiple triggers, or have extra Annihilator triggers. You can use Helm of the Host to make more copies of certain creatures, and then use Crothis to make extra copies. Like, you can also go into extra turns. You can go into control with counter spells. Don't be afraid to experiment. The thing that I want to say is find your own way to make the deck yours. I could tell you a bunch of different ways on how to build this deck down to the T, where it's like every card that you should have in here, but overall it comes down to what you feel comfortable with. If you want to go kind of, attack crazy with Annihilator triggers and getting the Eldrazi aura, which will be up on the field, it'll be on the screen because I forgot what it's called. To give Runo Annihilator and make him Crothis a 13 or 14 something attack creature with Annihilator. You can do that. There are lots of ways to play this deck. If you want to go for infinite turns, if you want to copy things with Lithoform Engine and make more copies, more tokens, there are definitely ways to do all of that. There are definitely ways to expand upon this idea, and because no one else is really doing it, or at least no one's posted these types of decks online, that gives you the freedom to just experiment and find your own way of doing things. I've already given you a way to do infinite mana in these colors, and there is a way to search for lands in black. It involves one of the Lilianas. You can plus her loyalty, and she literally searches for a swamp from your deck and adds it to your hand. I'll put her up on the screen so you can see who I'm talking about, because I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But like I said, there are a lot of different ways you can do this. You can do this with tokens. You could go with big mana. You could do this with artifacts. You could possibly use Mycosynth Lattice to turn everything into artifacts, and then put in Karn so that your opponents can't tap lands because they're artifacts, and then just lock out your opponents. You could go with there was a card from Kaldheim, something Wood Nexus. It'll be up on screen, where it turns everything into changelings. So then you can even turn those Eldrazi's into sea creatures. So then Crothis can then make double copies of them. There are quite a few cards. There's Conspiracy that has that effect, and there's another one. There's a blue one which I'll put up on screen because I can't remember. Like I said, I'm just going off topic. There are 3 cards that I know of right now that you can use, where they just turn any creatures you want into all creatures, or creatures of a specific type. So with the Nexus Wood artifact, it turns all creatures into changelings. So that way, like I said, Runo will make double copies of, let's say, Void Widower, for example, instead of making 1 copy. That's a way to think outside the box. There are definitely ways to expand your horizon. Don't be limited into just what you see or what you hear from other people. Always try to look into as much as you can, because there are a lot of different ways you can play this deck. It's your deck, and most of all, have fun with it. Have fun with it, explore, expand your mind, find new ways, maybe find your own combos, maybe even find other combos that people haven't thought about. That's the good thing about deck building and brewing is, for me, I like giving people a starting point or a template, or giving them the inspiration to build bigger and better decks. I don't want to tell you, put this card, don't put this card. Here are 30 something creatures to put in specifically, because there are different ways you could do things. If you go with the token route, like I said before, you could go with Eldrazi Spawn and Eldrazi Scions. There are blue and black Eldrazi's that do things. There are blue Eldrazi's that give Eldrazi's unblockable, that allow you to draw cards, or that give them protections. I think there's one that even gives them hexproof. It's been a while since I've looked through my pile, but I know that there are black ones that create Eldrazi Spawn and Scions. Then you can go with an aristocrat theme if you want to, where you can sacrifice creatures and get benefits off of them. You could tax your opponents with blue and black. There are plenty of ways to do that. Like I said, there are many different ways to build this deck, but it's just whatever you feel comfortable with. Don't be afraid to experiment. Take your time with this deck. Go through many different ideas. Don't be afraid to experiment. I'm going to keep saying it over and over, because I feel like so many people get caught up in, if I see it online, that's the only way I can play it, and that's it. And that's not it. There are always multiple ways to build decks and to expand on decks. Just because the easy way out is what it says on the card doesn't mean that there aren't other more fun ways to reach the same goal and possibly become bigger, better, and stronger. So I'm going to close it out with that, because I feel like that's going to be way more helpful than me just telling you what to exactly put in a deck. I will have a deck list posted in the description of just things that I feel like have really high synergy. I'm going to make a deck that anyone can look at and copy if they want to buy it. It might be expensive, because Eldrazi's are expensive, especially when you get to the Eldrazi Titans, like the Kozileks, the Emrakuls, the Ulamogs. They are expensive. They're going to cost you a couple $100 to get all together. But also I'm going to load the deck up with everything that I feel like the deck has this potential in my eyes. If I was to build it, this is how I would build it, and that's what's going to be in the description. So that way you guys can take a look at it. Maybe you guys can see some places where you could expand on it. I'm not going to put in a land base, because I feel like lands are all up to you. If you want to go with all basic lands, or if you want to go with fetch lands, if you want to go with filter lands, that's up to you. Lands are lands. If you want to go with all snow lands for some reason, hey, more power to you. But as far as like creatures, instant sorceries, artifacts, enchantments, maybe even planeswalkers, all that I'm going to have specifically in my deck list, kind of like as a starter point, or for you guys to see where my mind goes when I look at Runo Stormkirk and I think about Eldrazi's. So that'll be it for me. Like I said, take a look at the deck list, and if you have any more ideas, or maybe this even sparked your interest in Runo Stormkirk Eldrazi's, feel free to post your ideas, combos, strategies in the comments below for my friend, so that way he can see them and get more ideas and see, maybe something might catch his eye where he didn't think about that and he's really all for it. Something like what we did with Kyler when I posted my first video, and we all just started coming up with brainstorm ideas for like ways to break the deck and stuff like that, and just combos that we didn't think about, and etc. etc. And like I said, that'll be it for me. Have fun, you guys. I hope you enjoy the deck. And in case I don't make any more videos before Christmas, happy holidays.